Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. It's Tom Dutta, like butter here on. Well, a lot of butter going on and Thanksgiving down in America there coming up. We're a few minutes late getting started. Don't worry. This is the gremlin sometimes in the system. I'm really excited to introduce you to our first guest, but first take care of a business here. I want to say thanks to everyone. A couple of things that are happening. Take a look at what I put on the screen here. If you can see that, thanks to you and the interest in all the guests that we have coming, we have been rated twice by FeedSpot in the last 2 years as the top Canadian leadership podcast. We're in the top 20. And that only happens because of the feedback on the show. So I'm very excited about that. The studio is booked out for 4 months every week, and we have a wait list to get on the show. And that just is an indication that there is interest. We're live streaming now on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, Rumble, and YouTube. And what that means is if you see us live, you can go on, you can make a comment, you can chat with us. This is Peeking in the Studio as we produce the show live. And it'll be released in the future as an international podcast across all podcast feeds in 19 countries and a new YouTube premiere video. So on that note, I'm going to get us started. And I prepared something here to get you interested in the guests. Hopefully you'll stay a while. So stand by. When I first met Dr. Richard Carson through his work, I saw a systems thinker, a man who had built a career guiding global organizations through change, measurable, structured, methodical. But then I opened the book of change, and something unexpected happened. This wasn't a manual, it was a mirror. Inside those pages were stories of chaos and courage, of people wrestling with the unseen forces that shape every decision, every fear, and every transformation. And behind the models, behind the data, there was a human being who had walked through the same fires he helped others face. Change, he writes, isn't about process, it's about people and the invisible systems of belief and emotion that resist and redefine it. And that's what we'll talk about today. Dr. Carson doesn't just teach change, he's lived it. And in this episode, we'll move beyond frameworks and into the heart of what it means to evolve as leaders, as teams, and as human beings finding courage into complexity. So I hope you'll stay a while. The conversation you'll hear today may not just change how you lead, it might change how you live. Welcome to the show, Dr. Carson.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Okay, it's great to have you here. Man, you're a very interesting guy. I was looking at the back of your book here. You have your book with you there?
Yeah, I do.
Let's get you to hold it up. Give it a plug. Tell us the title of that book, Dr. Carson.
It's the Book of Change, which is a takeoff on the Chinese Book of Changes, the Chinese Book of Divination.
Very cool. Now, I've done a lot of change in my time. You look at his book, everyone, and you see I've marked it up. There's a lot in this. A couple things I've found interesting about you, sir, and we'll put this in the show notes. You have a 40-year career in practicing executive management, organizational consultant. You did a doctorate at a Washington State University, which is interesting to me, and written over 100 articles. So you're a very talented, knowledgeable guy. But here's the part that got me curious. It says that you started off your journey as an architect and urban planner. What was the shift?
Well, I really thought about this after looking up your show about change. And I realized that my career path, I didn't have a career path. I was very opportunistic from the very beginning, and I shifted my career every time I saw something I thought was interesting. So I started out in architecture. I got bored drawing door jambs and windows, moved into urban planning, went from there to community development, which is managing planners, engineers, building inspectors, moved on to being city manager. And then I went back and got my doctorate. So I didn't have a plan, which is really funny considering I was an urban planner.
Yeah.
I went with my gut in terms of what I thought would be my career path. And where I really took off was in the 80s, and I can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we'll get into Plato's Garden in a minute and weave that story.
Right.
But it's interesting, Dr. Carson, because we've got backgrounds that have meandered through different parts. And I always say I meet a lot of people that say that, I didn't start off where I started. And I have a daughter who's 28 years old, just married. She's doing her master's, but finished her degree in environmental engineering. And I'm thinking the same thing for her. It's like, man, she was an interim executive director with an environmental firm. I mean, it's pretty amazing to me. And she doesn't know where she's going to end up. In fact, she's still trying to evaluate that. So very good to have you on. Let's ask you this. Would you like to go into Plato's Garden and have some fun?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, everybody, let me set this up. We'll edit this and fix it up later. So what would it be like to go into Plato's Garden with Dr. Richard Carson? Well, welcome to Plato's Garden. Now, I'm talking to a man here who knows a bit about Plato. But for the audience, it's on the screen. If you're listening to it, I'll read it. Plato was an Athenian philosopher, and during the classical period in ancient Greece, founder of the Platonist school of thought and the academy, from the word academia with a K. First institution of higher learning in the Western world, apparently. Now, what's interesting is in life, Dr. Carson, we exchange knowledge and information. But very rarely do people do what's called criticality or critical thinking. So for the audience, what you're going to see us do, and you won't know I'm doing it as a host, is we're going to weave a conversation with Dr. Carson through three areas. We're going to get him to talk about the influences of the context of his public work and his life in macro, which is about what was going on in the world around him. Number two is meso, what was happening in the industry or sector where he does his public work. And number three is micro, my favorite, which is really about you. What was going on with you personally? And sometimes guests will go back right to their childhoods and tell us things that they didn't expect they would say. So what is this all about? By the time we're done with you, Dr. Carson, people will weave all this together like a mesh, and they might find deeper insights into your story. So let's get us going. I'm going to throw something out. We'll riff on it. We'll go into micro first, the person behind the theory. So your book is filled with systems and models, yet you speak with deep empathy about the emotional experience of change. So what personal transformation first taught you how fragile and powerful human systems can be?
Well, I was born and raised in Southern California. And it was a very normal childhood. I had a mom, a dad, two brothers, went to school. I was a surfer. Life was good. But then my father was a prisoner of war in World War II. And he was an executive, and he basically drank too much. Had a lot of anger management issues. Now you would call PTSD. So my parents got divorced. About the same time, my younger brother died.
Oh my gosh!
My whole kind of life changed overnight. And then the war in Vietnam started. I was going to be drafted, and so I joined volunteered and joined the Navy.
Yeah.
And that, when I came back from the war, I was pretty pissed off. I was very anti-war when I got back, became a hippie, rode my bike around on my motorcycle, used drugs, and just, was basically a ne'er-do-well. But in the 70s, I got married. I just had children. I moved to Oregon because I thought Southern California was a lousy place to raise children, and kind of rebooted my entire life. Like I said, I was doing architecture. the big change personally, in terms of my kind of trajectory, came.
Yeah.
I took a job in the early 80s in the state of Oregon was in a recession. I took a job with the state's economic development department, and they hired me to create a computerized system for locating sites for factories to be built.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, there wasn't anybody interested in but this. By the way, a computerized system won an award. It was one of the earliest uses of computers like that. And where my life changed is I got a phone call from a guy. He said he was looking to site a factory. He wanted 30 acres. And I went to my boss and told him about it. He said, "Oh, forget it. It's not important."
Yeah.
Just basically blow him off. Well, I didn't do that. Turned out that this guy was the front man for NEC America, the Japanese conglomerate. They ended up buying 300 acres, employing 3,000 people. And in the process, I became the go-to guy for the Japanese, who ended up bringing in half a dozen factories from different companies. And the reason they did it was they were trying to change something called the unitary tax.
Yeah.
And they wanted Oregon to drop it. And we did drop it. All these Japanese companies came in, and kind of a high point of that part of my career was taking a helicopter ride with Okiya Morita, the head of Sony, who wanted to see Oregon. So we flew him down the Willamette Valley in this helicopter. And I didn't realize it at the time, but he was a helicopter pilot.
That's very cool.
I had a hell of a time flying the damn thing. I didn't want to be the guy that killed Okiya Morita, but so from that point forward, my entire career trajectory changed.
Yeah. Well, let me jump in there.
Yeah.
First of all, wow, what a story, man. I tell you, that the initial part when I set up and I call the hook and I introduce you, some of these nuggets you shared with us are powerful. I wish I had them for setting that up. But I just throw this out and riff with you a couple things, because what happens is when you say things, my brain goes on a journey. I just thought about the helicopter ride, and it took me into that movie Apocalypse Now, and I'm thinking like Narita's on the helicopter with you. You guys are looking down, and are you going like, see that wave there? That wave, that's a great wave. I rode that wave.
Music, the Flight of the Valkyries.
Oh yeah. Oh, it was epic, man. When I grew up here, my dad took us. My dad was a military commanding officer in the British and then Canadian forces. So I honor you in your service. I was raised an Army brat. But we have parallels. You said about your dad and drinking. My dad became a chronic alcoholic. He started in the Army. Your young brother died. I'm so sorry for your loss. How did that? What happened there? He
was 20 years old, and he had a rare form of testicular cancer.
Oh dear.
It only occurs basically in young people, and it was pretty miserable.
Must be hard for your parents. What did your mom do? We know your dad was sort of a professional and then POW, etc.
Well, when he was off in the war, she went back to school and became a microbiologist. Well, the bad news for that was my mother used to use my brothers and I as guinea pigs. So when she first learned to draw blood, she would test it out, which was pretty bizarre. But anyway, she is a microbiologist with the City of Hope. Very,
very interesting. Yeah, just a couple more things here on my paper. You'll see me put another camera view. You see the camera on the screen there. That's my studio cam.
Yeah.
By the time I'm done with you, this page will be full of Richardisms. We'll get into this when we get into maybe the macro piece, what was going on in the world. But this thing about generational trauma appeared in your book, and when you started talking about dad and POW and drinking and all that, there was a thread. We'll talk about that carries through, but I can relate to that. Let's get into another thought I'm going to throw out to you, and we'll riff on this. That in your own life, Richard, where have you struggled to live the very change principles that you teach other people?
Well, ask me that again. Let me try to get my head around that.
Yeah. So you think about your life and how you're living your life. It could be any part of your life, but where have you struggled to live the very change principles you teach people? Because we're going to get into your change model in a moment.
Well, I think one of the hardest lessons I had to learn was to listen. If you're a manager, you make decisions day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. Some of the decisions I made were regarding almost catastrophic issues. You know, I was the city manager at Oregon City, where they had a flood that basically took out a great deal of the city. I had a child when I was over in Vancouver, Washington, that was attacked by a dog and killed. And those kind of events, you really have to deal with them. People expect you to deal with them.
Yeah.
But one of the hardest lessons I had, and I learned it from my boss, was just to shut up and listen. I also learned that from my wife, who basically told me one time, look, I don't want you to tell me what you think. I want you to listen. My boss told me the same thing. So I think as a manager, and one of the things I tried to impart to other people is listen to what the folks that you're working with are saying and take it seriously. Your subordinates are trying to tell you something, and it's important that you listen.
Oh, that's a big thought. You said, did I hear you right? You had a child that was killed by a dog? Is that right?
No, it was when I was over in Vancouver, Washington.
Yeah.
A child, one of my groups, I had several groups. I had 165 people, was animal control.
I see.
And a child was attacked by a pit bull and killed.
Oh, wow.
And because it was animal control, I had to work with the sheriff's office and deal with that.
I see.
And deal with the media, deal with the public, deal with the elected officials, everybody who was in a tizzy about that.
I see. Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And then somewhere in the earlier questions, you talked about you married in the 70s, you had children. How many children do you have?
I have 4 children. 2 of them were adopted from China. I went there twice pre the Hong Kong changeover. Yeah. And then I had a boy and a girl naturally, and the boy died.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. Yeah. Is the daughter following in your footsteps, or how have you influenced her?
I love to write. Okay.
Yeah.
I like to say it's in my DNA. My grandfather was a writer and author of fiction books. I write a lot, and she got her degree in journalism, and she writes a lot.
Wow. I mean, that's a whole other show topic, journalism. Yep. In my doctorate, I'm waiting for my examination. I just submitted my thesis. It was about, it's called The Quiet Revelation, Unfolding Identity in a Complex World. And this whole thing about, because I'm in the media space with podcasts, books I've written and things, but this whole thing about journalism and opinion and finding facts and critical thinking is a big meaning to me. The other thing I was thinking about is we should have got pictures of you when you're a surfer with your long hair. I can't imagine you being a hippie. You look so professor-like right now, but it's funny how things change. Going back to that comment you made about listening, it's a big deal. Command and control leadership. You know, I was groomed by my father to tell people what to do, and then leadership. What do you think? What do you think one of the biggest gifts for your children when you do more listening? What's the way that they are shaped when we do more listening versus telling?
Well, it's probably the same thing in terms of listening to what they're telling you. Yeah. And not just being the dad and lecturing, you know, you should do this, you should do that. Because in reality, they may not listen to you, and they may do the opposite if you're too strenuous about what their life choices should be. So, and being true to myself. Yeah. I spent my life making my own decisions and not following some career path. And so I don't really expect that of them. I mean, whatever they want to do, it's up to them. And, I think that's important is, to have confidence in them.
Yeah. And then everyone in Plato's Garden with Dr. Richard Carson. That's why we're doing this critical thinking. If we didn't know this first part of your story, I'll just put this up again, the micro about you, all the things you told us, we maybe wouldn't know the way you're shaped. But what I'm starting to sense here is you're a bit rebellious. You went through some very difficult things, some trauma, and you were told what to do, and then you developed this uniqueness of, I want to forge my own path. Going back to neuroscience, which I know you did a lot of research on, what I've learned is, I, for example, am married to a woman who's Italian. Anna was born outside of Rome. I met her through the banking industry when I was a CEO. And her father told me in private, she may not like me saying this publicly, but he said, but private before we got married, he said, whatever you do, don't tell her what to do. And what I found is throughout her career, she fought for her identity from a childhood. You can't play with boys. You can't do this. You can't do that. And I think the last thing I'll say to you and then ask you for your comment is, I've come across a lot of leaders I've led, especially when I was an executive, that don't want to do what you tell them or are somewhat rebellious. And I feel that if we wire that type of neuronal pathway, we wire that at an early age where we're always told what to do. We don't like having our identity and control taken away. There's a saying that goes like this. I heard that if you can't be under authority, you can't be in authority. Just tell me what you think about that.
Well, it's a delicate balance in terms of listening to people, giving them the opportunity to do their thing, so to speak. Yep. But as a manager, I know when I took a job over in Vancouver, the department I was taking charge of was not well thought of, let's put it that way. And I was basically ordered to fix it.
Yep.
In terms of the public perception, how it really functioned. And that's what got me into this whole issue of performance audits, organizational audits. But I mean, I was up front and basically said, look, this is the way, my initial meeting with my team leaders, I said, this is the way it's got to be. And I remember at the time, one of the guys who worked for me was the fire marshal. And the fire marshal said, he goes, I don't really agree with you, but I understand that I either am on the bus or off the bus. And he was right.
Yeah.
He and I got along fine. And even though I want people to approach things their own way, I still have to set parameters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, wow, talk about a shift in your style, especially after reading your book. I'm going to put it on the screen here, and we're going to just look into this. So everybody, we're weaving through micro. You're hearing a lot about Dr. Carson, but now we're going to get into a little bit of the mezzo and the macro. So that's pretty cool. What are we looking at there?
Well, the reason I chose the butterfly is the butterfly is this. First, it's the butterfly theory. The butterfly theory is that the wings of the butterfly create an atmospheric disturbance, which is very, very minimal. But as it spreads out like ripples on a pond, those ripples become, tsunamis, become hurricanes.
Yeah.
So this whole thing about, starting from something small and kind of growing it, or the impact of it, and how that impact over time occurs. So that's the metaphor I was using.
Oh, it's a beautiful picture.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say that your burning desire, why you did this? I mean, that's the big question. Why did you go out and do this research and teach what you're teaching, coming from where you came from? I think, and I may be wrong, challenge me, that when you go through trauma, you learn to use different senses. You learn to see and feel people where they're at in ways other people can't. And you experienced dysfunction in leadership. You saw it, and you decided you wanted to do something about it.
Well, the reason I went down this path in terms of my doctorate, writing the book, the job I had just mentioned, where I was basically brought in to change something, it was really to change the I changed the culture of the organization.
Yeah.
And I did something really unusual at the time. They just elected a new county auditor, and he ran on wanting to do performance audits as opposed to just financial audits. So I went to him and I said, look, I want you to audit me first. I want to be your first guinea pig. And he thought at the time, he thought I was crazy. But I had decided that if I made changes early on, it would be to my credit. And if I didn't make those changes later on, it would be to my discredit, as in probably getting canned. So he and I hired a performance audit company.
Yeah.
Came in, I went through that process, and at the end of the day, I liked it so much, this change process. So I went back, worked on my doctorate, and I quit my job, and I went to work for the company that did the audit. And I ended up doing performance audit in the 4 Western states for a number of organizations. And at the same time, that experience fed into my doctorate work in the book.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm going to put it back on the screen. Hold your book up again there, Dr. Richard.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. He's got stickies on it. Okay, so thanks. I'm going to add something to the screen again and just comment, and then you can talk about it. So on page 26 in the book, I've got the ebook on the screen. Thank you for sending me that. There's a chart there. Tell us what that represents. I think it's something to do with your research. What are we looking at?
Well, basically, I put together a list of kind of historical change events.
Yeah.
And change events can be any number of things. They can be natural. I live in the Pacific Northwest, and we got volcanoes that go off on the East Coast. You've got hurricanes. So you got natural events. You've got events like COVID. You get a number of kind of epidemic events going back to the Spanish flu that killed half the people in Europe.
Yes.
You've got one of the things that in recent history, and I was born in 1947. My parents went through World War II, and if you think about what happened in Europe, in Russia, in Asia, and just my father was a prisoner of war in the Philippines. They got married, they were separated. I mean, it was horrific. Yeah. And then, what people, I'm really concerned, and we can talk about this maybe a little bit later, but I'm really concerned about what's happening now with our children, in terms of their values, because they really have no concept of war, of starvation. They did go through the pandemic, but that mainly meant a lot of people staying home and playing games or using social media. So, every generation has some form of change that externally affects them.
Yeah, I'm going back to the narrative of the show, storytelling, and I think it's important, the work you're doing. I agree with you. There's people that I come across that are the next gens. When I say next is, the up-and-coming leaders, and they don't have that unless they had a grandfather who talked about the Great Depression or the war. You just don't know that. One of the things I learned about the importance of missing knowledge, I just want to share this with you publicly, is in my doctorate I discovered that I'm a son of my dad's dad. My great grandfather was an indentured laborer who was put on a ship in 1904 from India, sent to Fiji to work on plantations. And I studied that part of history. I didn't know about it, and it was a form of slavery. It was horrific, and read all the books and research, and I just saw a documentary film on it. And I started waking up and realizing why my dad was the way he was, why he struggled with alcoholism, why his father did. So I think that missing knowledge is important. And that's why I honor you with the book that you've written and the research and the sharing that you're doing. Let me add this back to the stage here. Dr. Richard, on the right there's a whole bunch of stuff that you see there in the list. What does that represent?
Well, as part of my research and my doctorate work, I did a literature search, and I'm sure you're familiar with what a literature search is in terms of a doctorate. And I looked at hundreds of articles, publications, narratives about change management, about OCM or organizational change management. I boiled those down to about to 22 models that basically have been created since post-war World War II by Kurt Lewin. And all those models have certain things in common, and they basically all have, starting with Kurt Lewin, kind of three phases. Well, I took all this work, and it became 3 phases, 10 steps, and then 39 separate actions that can be taken in terms of change. And I took this information basically from the previous work from these other authors and consultants and researchers.
No, it's amazing. By the way, everybody, if you want to know what it's like to do a doctorate research, that level of depth is significant. I think somebody told me, Richard, that less than 1% of people do a doctorate. And one of the reasons is, unlike PhDs, you're tested on it and you're challenged, and most people don't finish it. So congrats. Before I get into Mezzo here, we're going to weave back into Plato's. I'm going to show a picture on the screen we're seeing there. It looks like a wheel with colors. Explain, just read the title of the model, PSOCM, and then a few words about what that we're looking at.
Well, it stands as People Sustained Organizational Change Management. And the reason why that title is that organizations obviously consist of people, and to understand the organizational culture, you need to understand the people who founded it, work in it, lead it, and that in terms of when doing organizational audits, that includes everybody from the front counter staff all the way up to the board of directors or city council or whoever is kind of the oversight body. Yeah. So the 10 steps are basically, the first step is just getting organized. The kickoff, which is sitting down with people and employees and basically saying, look, I know this concerns you, change bothers you, but you're going to be part of this decision-making process. So it's not, you might actually enjoy it. I can explain how that happens. So collection is data collection, feedback. We go out and interview everybody from the front staff or different groups, external stakeholders. A lot of times what I'm told needs to happen from elected officials or the board of directors is not exactly what needs to happen. Their perception is kind of what the last person they talk to. Yeah. So the reality is, in terms of feedback, is to give them that information. Diagnosis, I actually use a model that was created by the National Institute of Health for diagnosing people.
Yeah, I saw that in the book.
Yeah, and it's very, very appropriate because, number one, organizations are people, but the steps that are involved in that diagnosis were just spot on. Design is then creating, a strategy going forward. Actions is following through on that. And I can talk about that. It's very important that what you learn, what recommendations are, it's not just a shelf document. You put it in a strategic plan. That plan is a real actionable plan, and it has accountabilities for people in the organization. There's resources that are allocated, and people are given times tasks and dates.
Yeah.
Managing that, managing those expectations, locking in basically, is adopting the strategic plan, and then maintenance is just the follow-up.
Yeah. No, thank you. I'm going to take that off the screen. We'll come back to it again. Let me just remove that. And I go back to what you said at the beginning, which was the word listen. And, I think I should let you know that if you look at my resume, I've been through 11 different transactions, mergers, acquisitions, failed alliances. Some of them I've led as a senior leader, like a CEO. Some I've followed.
Yeah.
And what I found with change management, I'll relate one story to you just to get you to comment, because you're an expert in this field. That without breaching confidentiality, this goes back about 15 years, 20 years. It was a large telecommunications company here in Canada that merged together with another one, which was Western Canada, resulted in about an $8 billion market cap company. And they brought in a young fella from the UK, United Kingdom, as the CEO. And his dad was a lineman for cable and wireless. Yeah. And so he had it in his blood about, blah, blah, blah. Back then, Richard, maybe the younger people don't know this, but telephone companies were traditional telephony, just twisted copper pair wires and, your phone with a twisted cord on the wall, like my parents had the banana phone. And then came along cell phones and data centers and all this. So they merged the two companies together, hired this new CEO, and the company was structured in silos. So you had different silos, each led by a president. Yep. They brought in a consultant, a guy named Paul, who started what was called the business transformation department, where they ran all the change through that. And this guy, so the CEO drove change through that BT unit across the enterprise, but they hit so many walls because the presidents of each silo were holding on tight. They weren't giving up their control. It was a unionized environment. And so changing things to fit the new strategy didn't work that fast. They ended up after 2 years, and I know this because I was caught in it, firing 5,000 employees, laying off 150 senior managers because the stock price fell down. And I'm getting to the end of the story. And I remember going through that, and I was responsible for eliminating 130 jobs, 40 million in costs, because I was on the leadership team, but I lost my job through it. But I remember after, when we looked at it, and today the company's thriving, one thing that came out of it was change takes time, and the deeper you go in cultural change, the longer it takes. And it actually took that company, Richard, probably 5 to 7 years to actually navigate through the change curve because of all the people issues. So I just want to ask you to comment with your model about, I know I threw a lot at you, but my point is the sustainability of change and the pace of change. Can you just talk about that?
Well, I'd like to comment about what you went through about silos. I was faced with the same issue in terms of silos. Especially, I'll give you one example. I had a planning group and an engineering group.
Yeah.
Planners and engineers are from different planets. And planners are very ethereal, kind of looking forward. Engineers are very nuts and bolts. And just getting those people to talk together, I almost had to hire a translator. Sure. Because it was so difficult. One of the things I came up with was I created a form of what I call matrix management. So the matrix is you have silos. Yeah. They do different things for different reasons, and they don't talk to each other. The matrix is I created in positions for individuals for finance, human resources, and I hired a person as the change manager. Now, these people were given equal standing to the heads of each silo. Yeah. Which was very different. And so especially the person who was the change manager would go around to each individual silo and basically say, look, you were given this task. You're accountable for this. We gave you the resources and the schedule. So where are you? And there would be consequences if they weren't meeting their targets. So and I had the same thing with finance and human resources.
Yeah.
I actually had the human resource person in the office next to me as kind of a quality control for me, being, not exactly being Mr. Sensitivity in terms of dealing with human resource issues. But so that was one way that I approached kind of attacking the problem of silos.
Yeah, and how do you see, or what's your thought on continuity of leadership? So, the context for this is, if we look at a lot of companies, there's a lot of turnover. A lot of senior leaders every 3, 4, 5 years. So, if the strategy's faltering, they'll change the CEO. And I think the number is about 83% of the next level leaders change over the next year or so, because they couldn't execute. But I was thinking about this, and also in the context of in the United States, about what goes on with your government. I don't want to get into politics, but there's change all the time, every 2 years, every 4 years. And so how do you sustain change, and does continuity of leadership matter?
Well, change has to be understood as a constant. In fact, I want to talk about ancient Greek. One of the philosophers said the only universal change, the only constant in the universe is change. And so you have to build that kind of mindset into your organization and encourage people to not only embrace change, but to kind of anticipate change. As part of the auditing process, what I did is set up work groups and basically gave the employees the job of creating the changes. So instead of going to them and saying, look, you're going to do this from now on, this is, we're going to change, because basically everybody would respond, well, we've always done it this way. That's sure. So if we put them in charge of the individual tasks and changes, that way they would actually, embrace them, because they took ownership of those changes. So it has to be a constant process where people are encouraged to look around them in terms of coming forward with changes that are actually be implemented.
No, thank you for that, everyone. I put back on the screen here. Again, get the book, The Book of Change. I'm holding mine up here in studio. Grateful for it. But on page 263, that kind of talks to that, the model of sustainable change. So everyone, this is a good resource and reference book. But it's my pet peeve about leadership and the amount of change in upper leadership. It goes back to what you said, which was brilliant, about listening. You have different styles of leadership. Some who come in who can't articulate their message and build psychological safety and trust, and change slows down, etc. Let's get back into Plato's, and I get another question I'm going to throw out here. The PSOCM model, to me, feels both scientific and spiritual. How did you weave those two dimensions together without losing credibility in a corporate world that values control?
Well, in terms of what I learned in actually doing organizational audits, I learned a lot about people and how I should approach folks. So it's really a matter of getting the leadership to understand what the process is in terms of their own organization, and why there's a need for cultural change. A lot of times it may be external changes that people need to adjust to. I won't name it either, but I did an audit of an organization that I found that the biggest problem was a person, and it was a manager who, for some reason, he must have taken a time management course someplace. He was having his staff report their activities in 15-minute increments.
Goodness.
And documenting those. And what I heard from folks was, we're spending more time documenting what we're doing than doing.
Yeah, that's micromanagement.
So the bad news sometimes when you're doing these kind of audits in terms of looking at change, it could be adjusting to external, impacts. It could be, but it could be internal. And sometimes the result is that it means changing people who themselves are incapable of change.
Yeah, thank you. Going back to that question I just asked you about how do you weave these two dimensions without losing credibility in a corporate world that values control? I'm just going to give you the mirror here and tell you that one of your gifts I see is storytelling. Yeah. And you do it well. But, you see, you told us in the book and you said on the show so far about how you experience these things, these pain points in your own leadership, or that's how you get through creating this psychological safety. Hey, I was in your shoes and you know what? This is what I experienced. I had a manager I couldn't build trust with. They couldn't talk to me. They were telling me what to do and I was resisting running away. I think that's where the credibility comes in. And I don't think there's too many consultants that I've met that can articulate real stories from the trenches. They put up PowerPoints and garbage and stuff, and it's like, but then somebody says, "Tell me when you did that," and they can't articulate it. It's like, there goes that psychological safety. So let me throw this out to you. You emphasize feedback loops and psychological safety. How do you convince leaders to face the discomfort of transparency when their instincts tell them to protect and perform?
Let me just tick off and what you just were talking about. The use of storytelling is a talent, and being able it's a way of showing empathy and basically saying, I understand what you just told me because whatever, because I went through that, I went through this, and people, if you can tell them a story that relates to them, then they're more apt to, take you seriously and actually maybe follow through on some of the things you eventually are recommending. I don't know if that's it can be a learned talent. Like I said, my writing is in my DNA. Yeah. Telling stories is in my DNA. And it's always done. It stood me well.
Yeah, no, it is. And everyone, again, get the book of Change. We'll talk about the website at the end where you can go read up on all this. I think you nailed it there. I mean, honestly, I got to be really frank with you. There's some leaders and people come on my show that are performative. And they think that, I'm on Tom's show, so I got to talk about my book and my accolades and my diagrams. It's like, that's nice, but that's all BS to me until I know who you are. Right. And when you started off telling me the early part of the story about, for those who just joined us later, your father, the POW, your young brother's demise, all these things, you know what? In that story was a thread that I connected to. My dad was an alcoholic. There's just all it took. And my brain I think it releases oxytocin. It's called a love chemical, where I'm like, I kind of like Richard. He knows where I'm at. He told me that, and I relate to him. There.
People had parents that went through the 50s, being a drunk or just drinking was like part of your social ethos. I mean, you went to a party, you went to somebody's house, and you drank. It's just, it's
exactly
just a fact of life.
Or the officer's mess. I mean, that's where my dad started really becoming an alcoholic, was the officer's mess. Yeah. By the way, so to honor him, when he died in 2018 from a heart attack in his bed, actually quietly, he was 23 years in Alcoholics Anonymous. He had recovered and gone and served others. He was an educator too. Let's weave into macro. We have one last segment, a couple more surprises. Are you having fun? Are you having fun? Okay.
No, I mean, the thing, you and I had talked about this earlier. I'm working on the second edition of my book.
Yes.
And the second edition of my book is focusing on artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And the impact that change will have on the workplace. So I think that change is going to be more transformative than almost anything. If you think about, I think one of the biggest changes was beyond the Gutenberg Bible, but I mean, was television, radio, and telephones, all these forms of communication that morphed later on into the internet, social media. And I think artificial intelligence is way up there in terms of what it's going to do to first world countries, third world countries, and us as individuals.
Yeah, it's a huge topic, and I'm glad you said that, because in that list of all the global impacts that I showed on screen, that's when I read your book. That's the first one I went, where's that? I'm glad you're coming to that. Let's throw something else back out here to talk about. What worries you the most about how society responds to uncertainty today?
Well, the first part is I don't think that the generation that's coming kind of up that will replace you and I don't know that their ethics, their character is really going to be enough to deal with all these changes. And it's just the whole idea of social media is kind of disconnected people from people.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's not a one-on-one kind of conversation. It's you're living in a bubble, in this kind of social media bubble, and they already have experiences where young people have committed suicide from using AI because it's kind of an echo chamber, in terms of what it's talking to a machine, and not a real person who's telling them whatever they want to know. And it's truly frightening, because I'm not sure that the upcoming generations are mentally equipped. It's almost like, in terms of AI and the internet, it's kind of dumbing people down. You and I talked about the literature search work that's required for a doctorate, where you go out, you find the information, you distill the information, and that is completely kind of gone in the current world, in the current ethos, where people just, if you ask a question on the internet, you get an answer, and it could be just complete BS.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said, and it comes back to what we're doing in Plato's criticality. So, these large language models, the AIs, what I realize is, you're right, they make mistakes, but people think that there's some monolith who can think for itself. It actually is all mathematical, and it aggregates information, and it can make mistakes. So you have to dig and push and ask questions and challenge it. I agree with you, and not everybody knows how to do that. I want to talk about social media for a minute. My daughter, many, many years ago, canceled Facebook, and I was blown away, because she went across the country to do her degree. Yeah. And I was heartbroken. Richard, got all the personal pictures of family. We communicated through that, and she cut it out. And I know people who struggle with depression, anxiety. I went through it with my concussion I had years ago, who go on Facebook and they measure themselves up to other people. And so then there's this feeling that I'm not good enough. The last thing I want to talk about that you said, which was really insightful to me, is the whole mental health and AI. I don't know what it was. I was watching or read an article about this thing with AI, and they were actually saying there were no guardrails in place in one of the platforms. I think it was ChatGPT, for these conversations in mental health. In other words, like, for example, I went through depression. I had suicidal ideation. I went through all that when I fell on my head and almost lost my life to concussion. Yeah. And I can go into AI and say, and the AI might come back and say, don't worry, everything will be okay. And it's like, no, that's the wrong thing to say. Everything is not going to be okay. The right questions are, how are you today? Are you thinking of suicide? Do you have a plan? How would you do it? Do you have support? So I think there's a lot to be done in terms of putting the guardrails and things in place around AI when it comes to things like mental health.
Even social media, you've got this whole phenomenon of bullying and trolling, where in social media you can become anonymous.
Yeah.
being anonymous allows you to play to your worst devils in terms of how you behave, what you say. Before social media, if you didn't like somebody, you didn't necessarily say it to their face, and you should, it just created so much negativity.
Yeah.
That there was no guardrails. There is none in terms of social media. The social media companies are constantly being criticized for just that. It's kind of like the Wild West. You can act any way you want, say anything you want, and there's no accountability.
No, it's interesting because it brings to mind something you said made me think about. I was watching, who's the guy, Zuckerberg, talking about the history of Zuckerberg in Facebook, right? Yeah. And the idea, I think, started off as a good idea in social media platforms that if I go and search change management, I find Richard's stuff, the algorithms go, hey, Tom's interested in that, so we're going to help him out and give him more of that. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. What I've found in some of the feeds I have, if I even buzz on a social media platform that's got some negativity about something, I just get bombarded with that stuff, and it's like, go away. And then it consumes me. And it's a real thing for me, Richard. There's been times where I've become addicted because of the peptides and things in my brain, where it's like a rush. I got to go and I got to look at my social media because I want more of that garbage. And it's a scary thing. So I think people have to definitely
the movie You've Got Mail. It's what you used to be. You heard that bing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
You're like Pavlov's dog. You would start calibrating. You hear the bing, and I got somebody.
That's right.
I mean, that's the kind of conditioning that we've got
that's right.
into.
I think that's why I'm holding up your book again, trying to do it. So when we release the clips, we can use it and market it. Everybody, I think that's why these interviews with people like Dr. Richards are important, because we're bringing in knowledge and information, and it's about now critical thinking. It's like, think about that, what we just talked about with social media and the limitations and the positives. We still need information, but it's being critical and thinking through, do I really need it? Does it serve me well? A couple more things here, and then we'll get into honoring you with a couple things. Your model, in my opinion, spans neuroscience, psychology, and sociology. Are we finally ready to lead as whole humans instead of fractured specialists?
I'm sorry. What was the question?
Yeah. So what I like about the research in your model is it brings in threads of neuroscience and psychology and sociology. And so are we finally ready to lead as humans instead of fractured specialists? In other words, when I lead you, I've developed the knowledge of the way I am with you. I know what's happening in my brain and yours. I understand how that works. If I have talking to somebody who has some trauma from the past in their lives, I understand what leaders who may have had trauma in their lives, that they show up differently, and how I lead them is going to impact. So me having all of those, I guess, disciplines as knowledge allows me to lead as a whole, not just as maybe a specialist in HR or whatever. Are we ready for that, or are we there yet?
Well, I don't think so. I guess that's really part of my concern is that the upcoming generations are so much used to living in an echo chamber where, whatever they say, whatever they do is kind of computerized and spit back at them. This is kind of like if you go on Amazon and buy something, all of a sudden you're getting commercials for all kinds of stuff.
That's right.
Yeah. So the machine knows what you're doing and how to, it's learning how to react to that. And so the whole concept of critical thinking is going away because the machines are doing the critical thinking for us, and we are getting so conditioned to that my concern is basically that we'll end up in a society that the machines will do everything for us, which could be very dangerous.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always like to have fun if I take my cell phone and I just illustrate it because I'm a storyteller. This is what we see from people walking the streets looking down at the phones. I think, and I challenge you on this, that throughout my life, when I've seen threats like that, I call them threats, that somehow there's always a break. I think Malcolm Gladwell wrote Tipping Point, the book Outliers, and there's always a tipping point. And I think the particularly learned this from my daughter, so I'm not just telling you it's from a 28-year-old, that there's going to be a tipping point in their lives where they break that cycle, where they realize that for me to coexist, to lead, I have to get my head out of my phone. And I think it comes to something you taught us, that you asked me a question: do you think you can learn to do storytelling? I believe you can learn anything through skill. You can learn skills, and you can practice it and develop new neuronal pathways. So thank you for sharing that really interesting thought. I'm going to get into the next segment, which is a very quick one before we go to honoring you. And I call this the book Unwritten, and it's my favorite. We've been trying it out. And so maybe it'll tie back to, let me just pull my paper up here and put it on the screen. You said something before, and I wrote it down. You're worried about children's lack of historical knowledge, basically, like, you know about the war and all this from your dad and things. And maybe that informs this answer. I don't know. I'm not leading you, but here we go. So the book Unwritten, Richard, if there were a second book of change, what would it explore that this one could not yet say aloud? You might have indicated it already, but go deeper.
Well, I think the cultural change, the kind of global cultural change that will occur, that will affect people in the workplace. So AI is certainly part of it. Social media is part of it.
Yeah.
There is a cultural change that we're going through now. You can see how torn apart the country is in terms of between kind of liberal, conservative. So that really concerns me in terms of, I'm not sure that the upcoming generations are able to deal with it, are able to adapt. I mean, certainly some people will, in terms of critical thinking and deal with it. But I think it's very possible that we become a much more kind of socialist society where people just expect that things will be done for them instead of them doing something.
Yeah, very interesting. Wow. We'll have to read your next book because that's deep. And it sent me on a journey in my head about this. I'm just going to go back and bring it up again. I don't know if you saw my TED Talk I did, and I talked about it openly. I was very sick when I did it. I fell on my head in a bathtub 2018 and broke my brain. Recovered fully, except for some visual challenge I still have. But I'm going to tell you that before that, and it's written in my work, that I was a workaholic. I got to the top. I was chasing success, and I had all this trauma following me I hadn't worked out. But the thing is, to your point, do we know if things are going to change? And you know what it took to have me change, to stop being a workaholic, to stop being connected to social media, to stop not getting enough sleep, to stop not informing myself and making my own decisions about my thoughts. It was falling on my head and going into depression and almost suicidal. Because you know what happened? They sent me into CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. They gave me a psychiatrist for 2 years. And I learned certain things, Richard. Like one of them is meditation is dialing down the speed of your brain to almost unconscious. And what are you doing when you're meditating? You're just listening to a guided track and focusing your thoughts on your breathing. So I just want to say that I've cut out the news. I don't read the news. I've done a lot of things to change so that all that noise that pollutes doesn't interfere with my life. It's not, but it took falling on my head and getting injured to learn that there's another side of the way we can live life. I just threw up on you, but just comment.
Well, I mean, some of us go through that. I mean, I had a similar experience. I had a tooth extraction that went bad and created something called trigeminal neuralgia, which is called the suicide disease.
Oh my God!
I was on morphine for a long time, and
wow.
That luck, finally that went away, and I reached a point in my life where I quit drinking, smoking, didn't use pot, I quit everything a couple of decades ago, including television for the most part. And
Or getting the applause.
but I mean, that experience for you and for me could be unique. In other words, it was transformative. We lived through it. Some people would just go on using drugs, using alcohol, dealing, just acting out their mental illness, or they might just live their lives being zeros, doing nothing, just kind
Absolutely.
of into the world of basic income.
Yeah. That's why we need more people like you. And I believe, and my daughter's one of them, I think, that there's people coming up. We need to focus on building leaders who can manage change, but who can think like you, maybe me and others who have gone through it. And I'll just say this without going on a soapbox. People aren't vulnerable. And I had this experience with you, and it's hard to get on my show. I vetted you hard. I asked you, what were your gut punches? And your answers were very curt and short, and you didn't divulge, and all this stuff comes out now. But as I got to know you and we were back and forth, you started telling me more about some of these things. And that's where I think there's hope, because when we can learn to be vulnerable and talk and share the stories of the challenges. Somebody told me that about one of my books, that when I read your book, it's hard to read sometimes, but it unlocks in me that it's okay to say you're not okay. And I think there's a lot of people, I would say that the strongest people on the planet are the most broken ones, because they've learned through adversity. It's like the alchemist to turn, from the fire dust into something. And I think that's why you're such a powerful educator. That's there
are people who are resilient.
Exactly. And you're one. Okay. All right. We're going to honor you now with did you know you're getting an award in a book review today?
No.
Okay. Well, if I ask you that again, you say, yeah, no, I do. Tom just told me. Okay. Just, this is where you get to relax for a couple of minutes. I'm going to share screen with you here. I'm going to put it on the screen, and I promise you that I would, there it is. Now, I don't do this for everybody's book. I only do it for the ones I find make an impact. So you don't have to squint and read that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read it out loud. So this is the 5-star Amazon review. It's an international review because it's posted on Amazon.ca, Canada. Yeah. And I'll just read it and just enjoy, Richard.
Sure.
The title of the review is called The Book of Change, a masterclass in evolving with humanity intact.
Wow.
Dr. Richard Carson's The Book of Change is more than a guide for leaders. It's a map for anyone standing at the edge of uncertainty. I've read hundreds of books on transformation, but few marry intellect and empathy like this one does. Carson gives us a disciplined framework rooted in neuroscience, behavioral science, yet he never loses sight of the human heartbeat behind every chart and metric. This isn't theory from the ivory tower. It's wisdom earned in the trenches of real organizational chaos. He reminds us that change begins where fear ends, that leaders are not managers of systems, but stewards of meaning. And reading the Book of Change made me stop, think, and feel. It challenged my own assumptions about leadership and reaffirmed my belief that science and soul are not opposites, they're partners. So 5 stars without hesitation. This book doesn't just teach change, it embodies it. Tom Dutta, congratulations.
Oh, that's amazing.
Okay. And
I haven't seen that.
Put your book up there again on the screen, and just read the title out again so we can make a clip for it.
It's The Book of Change, and you can get more about it from thebookofchange.com.
Yeah.
And anybody that goes there and would like a free PDF of the book, I'll send it to them.
That's very cool. Let me just put something else on the screen here. Take another minute. I'm going to share. See, everyone, when we're live, this is what you get. We do different things. We clean it all up later. Yeah. I'm going to stop sharing screen, and I'm going to share here. I have a little double vision and latency with convergence divergence from my concussion, so that's why you see me searching. But I've gotten better. So here is the, I think it's this one here. Yeah. Can you see that there? That's a pretty nice looking website. Whose is that? I think it's yours.
Yeah, that's thebookofchange.com. But it's just not the Book of Change. It's just Book of Change.
That's right. So as I scroll down, I'm on a different screen, but you're seeing it. It's got some cool things that we've talked about. A lot of great things. The author, lots of depth. There's even, well, look at that. There's a book review. Hopefully mine will make it on your list. There is a little cool thing up here called audio. And if you click it, it's Richard's voice narrating a little bit about that book itself. So congratulations on that. Let's just remove that from the screen there. And now okay. So now we're going to honor you with an award. It'll take a minute to do this. And then we have one final question. Are you familiar with challenge coins?
Challenge coins. I know the words.
Okay. Well, I'm going to teach you a little bit about that. Okay. So you see the camera in the studio again. Let me just take this out. So it's going to come to you. It's in a little package. There's the sleeve before I show you the actual award. So challenge coins surfaced during the World War I era. The practice of carrying a coin designed specifically for a unit was popular with the Army Special Forces. Carrying the coin at all times and presenting it when challenged to prove affiliation with that unit resulted in a number of consequences for those who could not produce a coin. The most popular required the coinless soldier to buy a round of drinks, and that still happens, and that practice is today. But the thing is that the first responders all over the world, they have these challenge coins that people collect, but they're for community. So when I started the show, I wanted one that had a connection for the top 1% in the world who took their life and did something with it to make an impact, which you've done. The front, they're hand-painted and crafted, made in the U.S. The front and their hefty is the show. But the back is, I'm biased, but it's the hero's journey narrative by Joseph Campbell. The journey you take to do exactly what you've done, taking the dark journey into the light. So congratulations on that. Welcome to the Quiet Warrior community.
Thank you.
And now we finish with one last question. This is actually called the Quiet Warrior Torch segment. So we asked the last guest if they could leave a question for you, and offline I'll get a question for you for our next guest. So their question that they left was, knowing what you know about yourself today, Dr. Richard, what's one thing you wish your younger self would have known, and why?
To listen to my wife and not give her advice.
Why? What would have that have changed? What would that have done?
Well, I mean, I think that goes for just in general about the, having the ability to have empathy and to listen to people as opposed to just tell them what to do because you're the boss. That was a lesson that I had to learn because you mentioned it earlier about my being outspoken, and it's gotten me in trouble a few times.
Yeah.
So
great. You nailed it.
Listening is important.
You nailed it. Let me just stop sharing the screen there. You nailed it. I'm glad to let you keep talking. And see, here's the thing, everyone. I wanted to jump in and tell you the answer I thought, but I caught myself because of what you taught us. I listened to you. And that's the very first step. If we don't listen to someone, then we don't know who they are and learn. And there's no empathy, and psychological safety goes out the window.
You don't learn.
We don't learn. And so God bless your wife. What's her first name?
Emma.
So maybe we'll honor Emma with this award for putting up with you all her life.
Exactly.
Well, I will leave it at that and let you give us the last word. Anything you want to say to everybody before we let you go? And we'll have you back again, I'm sure.
Well, I just trying to understand change in your life and how to deal with it. It's not just organizational change; it's personal change. And you went through it your way. I went through it my way. But it's better to try to, when you can, embrace it, live with it, adjust with it, as opposed to just kind of giving up.
Well, there you go. That's it. Awesome words from Dr. Richard. Everybody come back and watch the full episode. It's now sitting on all the feeds where it was live. You can watch it right away till we produce it as a final. So find that true purpose like you've found in Richard here and live your life, but live life that you deserve and desire. And we'll see you next week on the Quiet Warrior Show. God bless you, Dr. Richard. We'll see you again.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca.
All right, I'm just going to take us off screen here. There's a comment. Let me see what it said. Well, we're still we're still live, so I'm going to put this on the screen. Somebody put a comment here. Listening to your wisdom. Hi, Tom. Thanks. Seems like an interesting book. I'm personally transforming myself over the last couple of years, and I still am. I'd like to read it. Is there an audiobook version available? I don't think you have that yet, right?
No, because the type of book it is in terms of very informational. There's a lot of graphics. It's just
that's right.
It doesn't lend itself to audio.
It's all good.
I did a kind of video with audio overview. It's a short version of it, but no, they can get that on the website.
They can get it on the website. Just tell me the URL again for that.
It's just bookofchange.com. It's https:// back. Right,
just like that, right? On the screen there. Yeah, so for Mr. Prakash who put on that comment, go to that and you'll find everything there. Super. And grab the book. It's on Amazon. So let me take this offline now so don't go away.